Wow, it's been over a year since I started my Sonic Retrospective.
I made like 7 videos.
Shut up. Anyway, I figured now is probably as good a time as any to start branching out and review other games I own. But where do I start? I mean, I don't own a lot of games, but there's still quite a few, so it's kind of hard to choose. Maybe I could come up with some random number generator and let fate decide.
Let's see here, 150. Oh, okay. Why not just start with one of my favorite games ever? Piece of cake!
Perfect Dark, one of the last great games developed by Rare before it got gobbled up by the big green monster that is Microsoft. Perfect Dark is the spiritual successor to the classic GoldenEye, but it's often unfortunately overlooked and overshadowed by its predecessor. Despite being an objectively better game in just about every area conceivable, but that's a topic for another video. Way back in early 2000, I was just a lowly freshman in high school and just learning about this newfangled World Wide Web thing. Some of these websites even reported on video games. So it wasn't long until I found out that the team behind GoldenEye was hard at work on another game called Perfect Dark. This was the first video game that I ever got myself hyped up over before release. Rare began development on Perfect Dark almost immediately after finishing GoldenEye. The team was offered an opportunity to make another game based on the next Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies, but they declined without hesitation because they felt they had already spent too much time immersed in the Bond universe. Since so many members of the team were big fans of sci-fi, they wanted their next game to be more in that direction, drawing influences from things like Ghost in the Shell, the writings of Philip K. Dick, and movies like Blade Runner. Blade Runner, huh? I don't really see the influence. Rare also went with a female protagonist this time because game director Martin Hollis felt that the gaming industry needed to put more focus on women protagonists. The team at Rare drew influence from numerous femme fatales from movies like Nikita and Dishonored, and other characters like Agent Dana Scully from the X-Files.
Oh my god!
Even the name Joanna d'Arc is a play on the French pronunciation of Joan of Arc, which I will not attempt to pronounce. Nintendo began hyping up Perfect Dark pretty early on, releasing this teaser all the way back in 1998. Showing off an obviously early build with different enemies showing up in some levels, different gun sounds, and even some unused music. Like this track here. Anyway, gamers were pretty excited about Perfect Dark leading up to release. Rare hyped the game up with some pretty lofty promises. One of the first ones mentioned was that the arsenal in the game would include all 44 guns from GoldenEye. Turns out we only got like 10 of them. Of course, the biggest broken promise is the infamous perfect face feature. Originally, you could take a picture of your face with your Game Boy camera, upload it to the game using the transfer pack that came with Pokemon Stadium, and map your face to your own in-game character. Not only could you use this character for multiplayer, but you could even add it to the bank of faces that would be used for the mooks in single player too. And you could even save up to 4 faces so you could add your friends and shoot at them as well. Rare even went as far as to show off this feature at a special event at E3 in 1999. It just so happened that IGN editor-in-chief Matt Casamassina was there and had his face permanently mapped in the game. It's there. You can still shoot him. Thus showing that the feature was there and fully functional. I say that because not long after this article is another article announcing that the perfect face feature was scrapped. At the time, Rare gave some vague excuse about technical issues, but it was later revealed that the current US politics was a major factor in the feature being scrapped. With the Columbine shooting still fresh in people's minds, and the media scrutinizing video games more than ever, it didn't seem like a good idea to have a feature where you could put in the faces of people you know and be able to shoot them. Perfect Dark was released in the US on May 22nd, 2000, becoming one of the extremely few M-rated games published by Nintendo. I later bought it with some birthday money that June, even though I was only 15. the ESRB hadn't quite started cracking down on game ratings enforcement yet. The story has you take control of Joanna Dark, an agent of corporate espionage for the Carrington Institute, as she goes on her first mission. Miss Dark is quite a talented agent, so talented that she broke the Carrington Institute's scoring system by earning an A++ on her training, thus gaining the codename Perfect.
Good luck, Perfect Dark.
The Carrington Institute receives a distress call from someone named Dr. Carroll. Joanna goes to the Datadyne headquarters and gets him. Turns out he's not a person at all.
What?
Then Datadyne turns out the lights and we meet our bad guys. Datadyne gets mad and invades Carrington's home and makes them tell them where he hid Dr. Carroll. Carrington is weak, so of course he tells them just before Joanna gets there. Although if she killed everyone, who left with that information? Anyway, Carrington tells Joanna that his mess has left for Chicago and she needs to go clean it up. She spies on the two bad guys we met before, as well as some guy from the NSA. Spying on the NSA. Joanna learns that Dr. Carroll's personality was removed, which is surprising since scientists rarely have a personality. Also, the plot apparently goes even deeper. And apparently even involves the president. Joanna grabs Dr. Carroll's personality, which was in a vault right next to Rare's BAFTA award. Joanna calls the Carrington Institute to warn them about the president being in danger, but ain't nobody got time for that because Carrington's buddies are in trouble. And also aliens! Which would have been a total surprise if all the game advertisements hadn't already spoiled this particular plot point.
And where the aliens don't carry green cars.
So Joanna infiltrates Area 51, which apparently has moved to someplace that's not Nevada because this looks nothing like the Mojave Desert. Once inside, she makes contact with an undercover agent who happens to be the person who did have the record for best training score until Joanna came along. He helps her with a plan to get their alien friend out with some explosives and a disguise. Another wardrobe change and Joanna infiltrates the medical areas and stops the autopsy. Meanwhile, the doctor forgets how his trap works and lets Joanna escape.
No! That wasn't meant to happen!
Once safe, we learn that our little alien friend is named Elvis, and we gotta get him out of there.
But you can call me Elvis.
Now that that's done, Carrington decides that the president could use some help too. Apparently that NSA guy, Trent Easton, plans to hijack Air Force One while it's on its way to... They never actually say, really. And he wants to kill the president and replace him with a clone because... You know, I was always a little fuzzy about this part of the plot. I guess the clone would be on Easton's side and allow him to use the deep sea vessel that he's been trying to use, but couldn't he just forge some paperwork or a signature or something? This seems like a little bit of overkill, don't you think? I don't know. Even though the plane was already on its way down into the ocean, there's an attack from some alien craft that doesn't look like Elvis's and definitely doesn't look friendly. However, instead of a safe water landing, they managed to crash in Alaska. Seriously, where the hell were they going? And wait, how was Joanna hiding that Arctic gear under that stewardess uniform? So anyway, apparently Easton was hiding President Obama's clone in a cave near the crash site, so that's convenient. The clone is killed and the president is saved, and that whole subplot is suddenly done. Oh my god, that blonde guy's an alien! Now that that's all taken care of, the main characters go see what the big deal is with that deep sea vessel Easton was so obsessed with. Turns out an ancient Skedar, that's these guys, warship was discovered crashed in the ocean. The ship holds a vastly powerful weapon, and Easton wants to use it to help the Skedar take over Earth or something. And that's why they need Dr. Carroll. So Joanna gives Dr. Carroll his personality back, but she's too late. The program has run far too long and it can't be stopped because that's how programs work. But apparently he can run another program that will destroy the entire ship, and I guess that one runs faster. Back at the Carrington Institute, we see our good guys on their way to a press conference that will actually confirm friendly alien contact between humans and Elvis's race. Which is actually kind of cool. But the bad aliens ain't having it and they attack the Institute. Joanna fights off the alien invasion but gets captured and transported into the Skedar mothership along with a familiar face. Evil blonde chick sacrifices herself so that Joanna can escape, and luckily the cavalry arrives to help out. Now that all is well, it's time to head home. But Elvis spots something on the map. Turns out the Skedar left the mothership right next to their main holy planet that the Mayans could never find. And of course it's up to Joanna to go stop this ancient war that she's only known about for like 2 days. Good thing this is an alien planet with an Earth-like atmosphere. Joanna has to fight her way to the inner sanctum and kill the Skedar king or queen or whatever it is. Yes! Meanwhile, there's a Mayan armada waiting to blow the whole planet to shit, so Joanna better hurry. Then you get a final cutscene and suddenly reminded that you're playing a video game. Overall, the story is just a step above okay. The overall plot is just entertaining enough to keep you engaged until the end. But it's definitely helped out by the outstanding levels and set pieces. The level design and aesthetics are unique and varied, and some of the levels are absolutely massive. How does the game play? Well, have you ever played GoldenEye? It's a little bit like that. I'm kidding, of course. It's exactly like that. The game is pretty much running on a souped-up version of the GoldenEye engine, so that meant it was nice and familiar to pretty much every N64 owner back then, but damn near unplayable now. But back then it was pretty sweet. Pretty much anyone could just jump in and start playing immediately, and was almost like your favorite pair of jeans. There's an impressive arsenal of weapons, all of which look cool and have distinct, satisfying sounds, so it's easy to identify each one. We got everything from the simple and functional to the totally ridiculous, and everything in between. Each weapon even has its own secondary function, which makes the arsenal feel that much bigger. Although some of the secondary functions are kinda lackluster, like pistol whip and constant zoom. Really? But some are pretty awesome, like the laptop auto turret. And don't even get me started on the far sight. Also, the MagSec 4 is totally just RoboCop's gun, especially with 3-round burst mode. On top of all that, this game also expands on the gadget use from GoldenEye and improved it a bit as well. Most of the gadgets are pretty much just context sensitive and don't really add much variety to the missions, as you always pretty much have to use one to complete your objectives. But some of them are pretty cool to use, like the Cam Spy and Bomb Spy. Both are little hovering drones that you control remotely and have a cool fisheye view. Both are needed to have an extra edge and stealth, but they are not completely invisible. Enemies can still spot them and disable them if you're not careful. You also have a set of glasses that push the graphics capabilities of the N64. There's night vision, which is pretty obvious, infrared glasses that let you see things that are out of place, and X-ray glasses that make everything psychedelic and impossible to see anything right in front of you. The enemy AI is also pretty impressive and much improved over GoldenEye. Most enemies that spot you will become aggressive and will always stay pretty mindful of nearby cover, and will actually seek cover in a bind. Some enemies might actually run off and call up reinforcements if they see you.
Look out! Look out!
Or even give up if you manage to disarm them with the melee secondary function, or shoot their gun out of their hand and pick it up for yourself. Also, apparently there was an issue in GoldenEye where if you got too close to an enemy, their guns would actually clip through you and not hit you when fired. So to fix this, the enemies in Perfect Dark will attack you with melee if you get too close. This game has quite a few single player options. You might be thinking, that's just story mode, how many modes could there be? And that would be a good point. But this is Rare we're talking about here. First, we have one of the most extensive main menus ever, where you can just run around the entire Carrington Institute at your leisure, which actually comes in handy during that one mission. You can check data logs on everything from all the characters and weapons to even the vehicles that appear in the game. There's a firing range where you can try out all the weapons you find, and even a training simulator room where you can get a handle on movement controls in unarmed combat. You can even goof around with all the NPCs that are standing around doing nothing, yet seem to be quite annoyed with the woman who basically saved the world.
What is it, Joanna?
Don't you have to be somewhere? Loser.
Don't you have to be somewhere?
Don't you have a life? Stupid question, I suppose.
Kinda makes you reluctant to save them during that one mission. Perfect Dark also introduced a full-fledged co-op mode that let you take on the entire single-player campaign with a friend. And through that, we also learned that Joanna has a sister. Or if you don't have any friends, you can play co-op with an AI-controlled partner. And in that mode, you can even unlock other characters to choose as your running mate. Finally, we have something that I don't think I've ever seen in any other game. The CounterOp mode. Not feeling cooperative? Well, in this mode, your friend will spawn as one of the level enemies and will hunt you down with the rest of the NPCs and try to stop you from completing the mission. You can play every mission in the game in this mode, and I think it's pure genius. I wish more games had something similar to this. And that brings us to multiplayer. My god, the multiplayer. This game has some of the most robust multiplayer customization I have ever seen. Topped only by the Timesplitters series, which was made by the same people. You've got tons of varied and unique levels, both big and small, plus 3 levels from GoldenEye. Some are definitely better than others, but I find myself still visiting all of them at least once in a while. The weapons for each session are highly customizable too. There's pre-made loadouts similar to GoldenEye, and with more weapons available, that makes for lots of them. But there's also a custom loadout where you can put any weapon in any slot for your own sets. Or if you're feeling frosty, there's a random option. Of course, this game supports up to 4 human players, but this time it's amped up by adding up to 8 bots, or simulants. Even these guys can be fully customized with varying difficulties that can be different for each one, to different personality types like Judge Sim, who only goes after the person in first place, or Venge Sim, who always goes after the last person that killed them. You could even fully customize the look of each sim the same way you can customize your own character. There's even support for up to 8 different teams, and even the team names are fully customizable. And there's lots of different multiplayer modes for both team and free-for-all. Everything from deathmatch to capture the briefcase to King of the Hill and Hacker Central. The multiplayer and all the single-player options give this game nearly infinite replayability. Perfect Dark does require the N64 expansion pack to be able to use all the features. Without it, you can really only see about 35% of what the game has to offer. The entire set of story missions is completely inaccessible without it, and even the multiplayer options are limited. The graphics are pretty top-notch for what you can expect on the N64. The art design is nice and varied and helps give each level its own atmosphere, and the game truly pushes the hardware to its limits with the sheer massiveness of some of the levels. The character models are also much improved over the cardboard boxes in GoldenEye. The attention to detail is magnificent as each gun has its own unique style and look, complete with its own reload animation. It definitely puts the tactical in Tactical Shotgun. And I love how even in multiplayer, your hands and arms that show up on screen actually reflect the character model you chose. I also want to point out the lighting engine here as well. Apparently the team at Rare wanted to be even more ambitious with the lighting by giving a weapon-mounted flashlight to help you see in dark areas. But this idea had to be scrapped as it was pretty much impossible to do with the N64 hardware. But what we got was still pretty damn impressive. Muzzle flashes will light up the area, lights can be shot out or broken with explosives, and will even flicker and short out after being shot. But the limitations of the hardware can still be pretty noticeable. There's also some pretty decent blood effects too. Blood will pool around dead bodies or splatter on walls if the enemy is close enough. This is probably the biggest factor in the game getting an M rating. Unfortunately, all these graphical accomplishments come at a cost. When I say this game pushes the N64 to its limits, I mean it. Even with the increased power of the expansion pack, this game still has some pretty bad frame rate issues. It's most noticeable in very large areas or where there is smoke and explosions. It's especially bad in multiplayer with lots of bots and explosions at the same time. The game slows to pretty much unplayable levels when this happens. Finally, we move on to the sound, which like everything else is just sublime, especially since the game supports Dolby 5.1 surround. Unfortunately, that isn't really conveyed all that well over YouTube. The sound effects are good, appropriate footstep sounds, great ambient sounds, and the guns all sound unique and satisfying. Another upgrade from GoldenEye is all of the cutscenes are fully voice acted.
I can't believe Easton would do such a thing.
And even the enemies will chatter during an encounter. Everything's all topped off nicely by a stellar soundtrack, which I think is much more varied than the music in GoldenEye. They weren't constrained by the Bond theme this time around. A lot of people like to credit Grant Kirkhope for the soundtrack, and why not? He's pretty much the music god over at Rare. However, I think the lesser-known Graham Norgate probably had more to do with the music in this game than Kirkhope. The two main clues that support that theory is the fact that Kirkhope said on Game Grumps that Norgate did most of the work on the GoldenEye soundtrack.
Yeah, but Grant, you also did the music for this game, yeah?
Yeah, me and Grant Norgate did it together.
And also this little clue here. I probably gushed more than I should have, but like I said at the beginning, this is one of my favorite games of all time. And with good reason. Perfect Dark still managed to be successful in a time when people were starting to transition to the PlayStation 2 and Sega Dreamcast. It's thinking. Rare managed to keep the N64 relevant as the next generation loomed over the horizon. Perfect Dark is truly epic in scale in both single player and multiplayer, but it's not without its flaws. The controls by modern standards are damn near unplayable, and the frame rate issues can get frustrating. Rare was a bit too ambitious with this game and created something that was too big for the N64 to handle. Kinda like the Crysis of its day. Yes, I'm going with that comparison. Perfect Dark deserves every bit of praise it gets, and if you haven't played it, then shame on you. You're truly missing out. Hey, if you like this video, you can check out more at youtube.com/user/noiselessmound, and also follow us on Twitter at noiselessmound.